So yeah, as Lee mentioned, I came on with the Institute just over a year ago, and I'm an organizational psychologist by background, anthropology, philosophy from my schooling, and I had taught in, how did I come to virtuous leadership? Prior to actually entering into working for high school as a dean of students, after I finished my graduate studies, was asked by a friend and mentor of mine to help him develop a character formation program for the seminary. He had recently taken over charge of that particular dimension of their formation and set me to work investigating how to develop in a programmatic way leadership character, particularly, right? Future leaders, clergy, members of the church. And so I've been engaged in this work. I've been engaged in this work of researching, delving into philosophy, psychology, anthropology, understanding the dynamics of moral psychology, what virtue is, how do you shape character, what makes for great leaders. So studying the lives of great leaders, studying the methodology of people who form great leaders, where do some great leaders come from? Many different sources, not least of which was various manuals used by the military academies, officer training schools. These were a great help in forming, giving some sense of how this is put together. And informed by this philosophy and psychology, among all these other resources, I came across, actually at the recommendation of my mentor, Virtuous Leadership by Alexander Havar. And I saw in that system a way that Alex was able to articulate in a concise way, in a nice, neat paradigm, a way of thinking about it, a way of thinking about leadership and character that's articulable, it's accessible. Because otherwise, and he's the only one who'd been working in that space. Most of what I had seen and involved was like mass tomes, libraries worth of things that have been written. Virtuous Leadership was a way to articulate this in a nice, packageable way. And so what I had done was work translating theory into practice, and realized that virtuous leadership was really the way to bring this all together. This is the way to move forward. So fast forward, I begin working for a high school. I'm working for them as the Dean of Students, Dean of Student Life, forming a character formation program for the school. I've been teaching virtuous leadership to the students. This now shapes the work that I do. And through my connections with the university, where I was also an adjunct teaching some of their courses, I got in touch with Alexander Havard, found out that he was going to be coming to Minneapolis, where I was based, where I still am based. Coming to Minneapolis, and this was last year, met him, and it was really a providential meeting, wouldn't you say? A providential meeting that comes together. And without going too much in depth, right, that's not the important thing to talk about, right? That's how I found virtuous leadership. What moved my heart was a recognition of the fact that the fundamental crisis of our society is not immorality. It's not manipulation, politics, materialism, consumerism. These are all effects. These are all effects. But the primary sickness, if you will, the crisis that we're facing, the crisis of leadership that we're facing, is one of pusillanimity, small-mindedness. People aren't chasing after things that are bigger than them. They're not getting too big for their britches, right? What they are is they're being too small. They're aiming at things that are too small for them. And if the problem is pusillanimity, the solution is magnanimity, great-souledness, striving for greatness. This is identified by various thinkers over time, particularly in the last century. Right? C.S. Lewis writes about the abolition of man, like we're a society of men without chests, right? We emphasize the virtues, these skills of the intellect on the one hand, and we're driven by the passions, by our feelings, by our gut on the other. But at the bottom of it, there's no heart. There's no core. And these virtues of the heart are magnanimity and humility. At first they seem like opposites, but they're really two sides of the same coin. Magnanimity is striving for greatness, recognizing that your talents, that you have talents, that you're made for something greater, that you strive to achieve greatness, but by bringing out the greatness in others. And that's humility. Humility starts with self-knowledge, starts with self-awareness, owning the fact, like knowing who you are and becoming self-contained, so that through that self-knowledge can flow through the process of self-acceptance out into authentic and genuine self-gift. and the way that we give of ourselves. This is service, right? This is service. And true servant leadership is not about just simply identifying yourself as a servant, doing things that you think are service, or having that as a value. I've studied a lot of leadership. Right? This is one of my academic focuses in my own research. I've studied a lot of different models of leadership, and the closest thing we see outside of various transactional forms of leadership, technique, manipulation, right? The pop psychology that you can read in all the business magazines and things that are out there, is values-based leadership. This is not sufficient. Because values are fundamentally outside of the person, right? The values are outside of you. And if I can have these kinds of values, it's not that hard to switch them for these kinds of values over here. So you have one set of values, change to another set of values. That's what we see. That's what the political discourse is driven around. If it's about family values, it can be something about anti-family values. Very easy to change your values. Virtue implicates you personally. Everybody's comfortable with laying out their list of values. Very few people are comfortable really examining themselves, seeing where they're strong morally and where those areas of challenges that they have are morally. So the solution, if the problem is pusillanimity, the solution is magnanimity. We focused, as I said, on intellectual virtues and even on the basic moral virtues. In many religious circles, right, through the church, Christianity, we have a great tradition focusing on we want virtuous men and women. We want children to live morally upright lives, grow up into maturity. That we've lost a lot of the aspects of maturity that comes along with magnanimity. True maturity comes with magnanimity and humility. But given the state of things in our society, and I would say even in the best of times, it's not enough to train up merely good people. We don't need merely good people. What is needed is to raise up a generation of leaders capable of drawing out the greatness in good people. Because if people aren't good, who's going to lead them to become good? If people are good, goodness is not just made for ourselves, right? We can't just rest on our own laurels and our own personal private virtues of being good. Well, I hold these values. You hold those values, but at least I'm cultivating certain virtues. Courage, self-control, so temperance, justice, prudence, fortitude, right? 4 cardinal virtues. This is not enough. This is the foundation. But we need to focus, laser focus, to really transform society, to focus on the virtues of leadership that are the essence of leadership, and that's magnanimity and humility. So what do I mean by magnanimity and humility? Magnanimity, as I said, striving for greatness. There's 2 basic dimensions of any virtue, the contemplative side and an active side. Magnanimity, the contemplative side, is the recognition of your call to greatness, that you are made for something other than yourself. Right? The human person is not made to be isolated as an individual. A person achieves real fulfillment of their personhood in communion with other persons. You need to become a solid self if you're going to give yourself. So in any capacity, and leadership takes many forms, you need to recognize your inherent call to dignity, call to greatness. It's a contemplative side. The active dimension then of greatness, of magnanimity, is setting out to achieve that, setting out to achieve lofty goals, setting out to achieve great things, to actually have the courage and audacity to reach out to others and accomplish something in the world. Not just to dream big, but to take those dreams and transform them into action. The flip side of magnanimity is humility, because magnanimity is not megalomania. It's always not balanced, not tempered, but accompanied by humility. These 2 work in tandem. It's 2 sides of a double helix that make up the fiber of leadership. Humility's contemplative dimension, self-knowledge. You got to know yourself. You got to know what you're good at. You got to know what you're not good at, what you like and what you don't like. There's a deeper kind of self-knowledge. It's who you are. What's your name? Who are your parents? Where are you from? What are the incidents, the activities, the things that have happened in your personal life that have shaped you to be who you are? And even more fundamental than that, more basic than that, what are you? You have to understand what it means to be a human being. What does it mean to be a son or daughter of God? What does it mean to be a man or a woman? These are not strange questions to us in today's society. This is all part of humility. We need to develop it. We need to train humility. We need to teach humility. And we need to teach magnanimity. And these two form the essence of leadership. These two form the essence of leadership. The last 18 months, 24 months, have only gone to show, whatever your political persuasion, we've seen through all the media, have only gone to show the severe need for something more than what we have. It's apparent to everybody there's a crisis of leadership. There's a crisis of leadership in this society. That's okay. That's okay. We can deal with that. There have been worse things, right? There have been worse things. And some of us here, I can tell, have seen the face of worse things. But it's a crisis of character. It's a crisis of character. And so what we need is people who can rise above the din, the noise, to stand out and lead others into greatness. This is something that can only be done by true leaders. True leaders. Those who have cultivated the character of leadership, that know that leadership is not merely a technique or a task. They know that leadership is a matter of character, but that they also put this into practice. That they also put this into practice by taking time to know themselves, reflect. Because in knowing myself, I can begin to see, if I know myself truly, I can begin to see truly who you are. If I can see truly who you are, I know my own gifts and strengths, I can begin to see your gifts and strengths. And if I'm going to lead you, if you are going to lead me, you need to draw out the greatness in me. I need to draw out the greatness in you, because this is what leadership is at its core, is achieving greatness by bringing out the greatness in others. Leadership is not for me. Greatness is not for me, right? This can only be done by true leaders. Okay, great. So now what do we do? Well, leaders aren't born, they're made. Leaders aren't born, they're made. They're trained, they're formed, right? And leadership is not the call of just the few, but the many. Leadership isn't a position. It doesn't depend on your job title, your position in an organization or in society, whether that's, a mother at home, just a guy working on the line in the manufacturing plant, military officer, teacher, school president, CEO, what have you. These are all different places leadership can be lived out. Leadership can be lived out, but each person has a fundamental call to leadership. And leadership, so interesting quote. Solzhenitsyn, right? Alexander Solzhenitsyn, most of you have heard of him, right? He points out that freedom is not a right, it is an obligation. Which is an interesting thing to change the discourse of our times from rights to understanding properly what our responsibilities are. But that freedom is not a right, it is an obligation. And virtuous leadership is about freedom. You need to be able to lead yourself in order to lead others. Self-leadership, right? Self-mastery, having that freedom to act with a truly free will, not being ruled by your temperament, not being ruled by your passions or the things that are driving you day to day, but to have something deeper at the core. So leadership, like freedom, is not a right, it is an obligation. It is an obligation for each and every one of us. Each and every one of us has the call and the obligation to become a leader. We are made for greatness, and that greatness is achieved by bringing out the greatness in others. So I want to tell you something about what we're doing with the Virtuous Leadership Institute. In North America, Virtuous Leadership Institute North America has been around, as they said, for some years. And there are now a number of institutes around the world in different regions of the globe that have opened up. Virtuous leadership is something that is multicultural and multinational. People recognize this around the globe, whether they are in Kenya, France, Belgium, Mexico, China, any of the other places that are recently opening. Portugal, another institute, Spain, institutes of virtuous leadership are springing up. Alexander Havard is going around the world and founding these. We are part of a global movement. Now is the time. There's an inflection point in history where people are recognizing not only the need, but the capacity. Never before have people felt at such a mass scale so isolated, so bound up in themselves, so driven by anxiety and fear because of the constant stream of crisis news running 24/7. but never before, because precisely these same technologies have we had the capacity to be so connected. Never before in history have we had the potential to impact so many people at such a mass scale just at our fingertips. Think of the power of that. To put out a message of virtuous leadership, to put a vision before so many people of the dream, of the greatness that is in humanity, the great things that the human race can accomplish. Not as some mass abstract thing, humanity. Lots of terrible things have been done in the name of humanity, but as individual persons. There's a dream of the great things that we can accomplish. To be able to share that with others and show them how to accomplish it, we live in a very privileged time to be able to do this. Our mission at the Virtuous Leadership Institute is to ignite hearts for greatness and raise up a new generation of virtuous leaders capable of transforming life, culture, and business, and so lay the foundations of a new civilization. We have a world to change. We have a world to transform. And whether you accept it or not, we are the ones who are capable of achieving that. You, me, together, individually. We are capable of achieving that if only we will set our minds, our hearts, and our wills towards that end. It's not for want of technology, tools. The apostles had far less, and they did a lot. We've got a lot at our fingertips. And if we utilize that well, direct it in the right way, even in the small ways in everyday lives, we can affect this change. If you want to transform a society, how do you do it? There are a few areas you might focus on. I think an ideal, think with me, if you wanted to change a society, it'd be great if there were an institution of some sort that everybody in some capacity had to go through for some prolonged period of time, ideally from the time that they're children, right? This would be really good. It's really good, great, formative years, if only there was such an institution. Well, thankfully, I think we call it the educational system. There are different educational systems, however you want to think about it, right? But schools, what schools? I want you to think about what had the greatest impact on you from your days in school. Look back, think back. What do you remember? What shaped you? I can almost guarantee that it was not the power of the quadratic equation. It wasn't Pride and Prejudice or whatever you might have been reading in those days. It was the impact of specific teachers, right? Teachers, coaches, maybe some friends, mentors, voice, choir directors. It was somebody who had an impact on you. The formative influence of a teacher, the power to shape young people, lies in the person of the teacher, not in the books, not in the curriculum, not in the after-school policies. So what we are doing this summer is launching a series of workshops to form teachers, to train teachers in virtuous leadership. And we have the goal, and it is a bold goal, but it is an achievable goal, to train 1,000 teachers by May 2019. May 2019, have 1,000 teachers trained in virtuous leadership. Do you have any idea how many students an average teacher impacts every year? They're in contact with, they have the potential to impact 100 students each year. Now, obviously, within one school, there's a lot of overlap. But if we reach 1,000 teachers, that's 100,000 young people that we can impact. And that's no small feat. When you think over the long term, these are the future leaders. We can raise up the future leaders of a new generation. We're also making accessible, in ways that never before were possible, the vision of virtuous leadership and the ways to achieve that. We're launching a series of online courses that engage multimedia, utilizing the latest of modern technology to bring forth a very old and very time-tested idea to help people cultivate the dream and achieve it, that they can become virtuous leaders. This is something that can be accessible worldwide. 2 major initiatives that we're engaged in this summer, leading into this fall. I'd love for you to all join in, to become a part of that. What I want to share with you, and we're going to have in a moment, you hear something of a personal experience of the power of virtuous leadership and some of the other ways in society that can impact. But I want to share with you what we believe as an institution, as the Virtuous Leadership Institute. We believe that each and every person is created for greatness and endowed with an unimaginable dignity that can be realized only through the cultivation of the virtues of the heart, magnanimity and humility. We believe that leaders are not born, they are trained. Leadership is not a matter of mere technique, but it is an act of character. You are not a functionary, but a diamond that must be refined and perfected to achieve its true brilliance and radiance. And the task of the leader is to find the diamond that is embedded in each person that they serve. We believe that freedom is not a right but an obligation, and that true freedom is impossible without virtuous leadership. We believe that each person already recognizes in their heart the incredible call to discover their mission and to become their true selves, the call to greatness and service. Therefore, in the words of the great architect Daniel Burnham, we will make no little plans, for they have not the magic to stir men's hearts. We will instead dare greatly to achieve greatness by bringing out the greatness in others, for this is the very essence of leadership.